Welcome to a new episode from English Plus Podcast. This is your host Danny, and today it's all about stories. And in this episode, we're going to have a story from the Story of Us series written by Danny B. Phoenix, which is my pen name when I write literary fiction. So let me tell you a little bit about this story. In this story, I invite you into the heart-wrenching world of a Holocaust survivor, told through her eyes and in her own words. This is not just a recounting of history. It's a personal journey through fear, loss, and the desperate will to hold on to what little remains. From the quiet corners of a ghetto to the brutal reality of a concentration camp, we walk beside her as she confronts the impossible, finding slivers of humanity in the unlikeliest places. This episode is more than one survivor's story. It's a reflection on what it means to suffer, to endure, and to live again. But beyond that, it asks us to rethink how we view suffering itself, not as something that belongs to any one group, but as a shared wound carried by all humanity. Every act of cruelty, every moment of kindness reverberates through us all. Stay tuned, my friends, for an emotionally powerful narrative that blends poetic storytelling with deep reflection. This episode reminds us that the pain of any person, anywhere, is a loss to us all, and that the only way forward is together. So join me as we reflect not only on the horrors of the past, but also on the resilience that continues to shape the present and future. So let's start with our story, which I named, by the way, In the Shadow of Lost Names. Now, of course, if you want, this story along with other stories under my pen name Danny B. Phoenix are available on Amazon. I will leave you a link in the description so you can check them out. But now, without further ado, let's start with our episode for today. There are stories that live in silence. Stories carried not in the folds of history books, but in the spaces where memory falters. Too heavy to bear and too vital to forget. This is one of those stories. It does not ask to be told, and yet it demands to be heard. It is a story that begins where everything once seemed whole and ends where nothing remains intact, except perhaps the fragile will to keep breathing. This is not a tale of heroes or victory. There are no moments of triumph to celebrate. What you will find here are shadows, echoes of a life once filled with laughter, love, and belonging, all swept away by an unspeakable storm. It is the story of one, yet it carries the weight of millions. A single thread in a vast tapestry of suffering unraveling before your eyes. Imagine for a moment what it is to stand on the edge of everything you have known, only to watch it crumble without mercy. How does it feel when time becomes irrelevant? When days bleed into nights and the concept of tomorrow grows distant, an illusion too painful to indulge? How do you keep your soul intact when every fragment of your identity is stripped away, one loss at a time, until even your name becomes a whisper in the void? This story is not told to evoke pity. It is a testament to endurance, an account of how, even in the face of unimaginable cruelty, humanity clings to itself in the smallest, most unexpected ways. A touch, a glance, a shared breath in the dark. These moments do not stop the flood of darkness, but they are the quiet flames that refuse to be extinguished. They are what it means to survive when survival no longer makes sense. And yet, perhaps the most haunting truth is this: suffering, even when it stretches beyond comprehension, carries no desire for vengeance. The burden of hate is too heavy to carry on a road already filled with so much loss. As one survivor might say, I wouldn't wish this upon my worst enemy. A testament not to the absence of pain, but to the presence of something deeper. and understanding that some wounds are too cruel to inflict upon another, even in retribution. This story is just one voice in a sea of countless others. But through this single voice, may you glimpse the vastness of the human spirit, the way it shatters, the way it bends, and the way, against all odds, it sometimes still dares to hope. It begins with a breath, a heartbeat, a hand held tightly in the dark, and from there it unfolds, a descent into the darkest paths of human cruelty, told not with grand declarations, but with the quiet honesty of someone who lived through it. This is not history as it is measured by dates and battles. It is history as it was lived, in the flicker of candlelight in a cold ghetto, in the rattle of a train car filled with whispers, and in the silence that followed when there was no one left to whisper to. It is a history etched in the hearts of those who survived and in the memory of those who did not. And so we begin. There was a time when the world was whole, and I lived in it like everyone else. My feet anchored to the ground, my heart light with the rhythm of ordinary days. Morning came with the scent of bread baking, and evening wrapped itself around us like a familiar song, sung without thinking. My mother's hands always smelled of flour. My father's voice hummed old melodies that belonged more to the air than to him. And I belonged too. I belonged to the laughter of my friends echoing in the narrow streets, to the quiet murmur of Sabbath prayers that filled the room like a gentle tide, to the warmth of a family gathered beneath a single roof, content with the simplicity of being together. In those days, we knew hardship, yes, but it was the kind of hardship you shared over tea, the kind that pulled neighbors closer, not apart. There were mornings when the bread was stale and winters when the cold crept into our bones. But it was a life, a real one, the kind you could touch, taste, and hold on to, even when it slipped through your fingers a little now and then. I used to dream, not of anything extraordinary, but of small things, like a new pair of shoes or the possibility of growing old in the same house where I was born. I imagined walking through these streets forever, arm in arm with the people I loved, watching seasons change in the same familiar way year after year. There was beauty in the ordinariness of it all, though I didn't know it then. You never realize how sacred a moment is until it's gone. How sacred the sound of a child's laughter is, or the way sunlight filters through a cracked window, casting little patterns on the wall. These things seemed unremarkable, too small to matter. But now they live in my memory like relics, fragments of a world that no longer exists. We lived in a ghetto, though we didn't call it that at first. It was home, no more, no less. The streets were narrow, the walls a little too close, but it was a place where life carried on, despite everything. Children played, mothers scolded, old men sat at their windows watching the day unfold as they always had, as if the sky would never change. And in a way, it hadn't. Not yet. Not until the rumors began. At first, they were just whispers, broken fragments of fear carried in conversations that ended too abruptly. Someone knew someone who had disappeared. Someone else had heard of a town emptied overnight. But those were distant stories, the kind that belonged to other people in places far from here. We didn't talk about it much, not because we were blind to what was happening, but because hope was easier. We told ourselves the world had been through worse before, that we'd make it through again. After all, what else could we do but hope? Hope was the one thing no one could steal from us. Or so we believed. Even as the soldiers began patrolling the streets, even as the walls grew higher and the gates closed tighter, we held on. We told ourselves it was temporary, that soon enough the madness would pass. There was still birthdays to celebrate, meals to cook, prayers to be whispered under breath. As long as those things remained, life was still life. But there were cracks in that hope. I could see them in the way my mother's hands lingered too long on the mezuzah every time she touched it. In the way my father's voice wavered at the end of a song, as if he knew the tune was nearing its final note. And in my own heart, there were nights when fear curled beside me like a silent animal, too heavy to move and too familiar to fight. It whispered questions I didn't know how to answer. What if this time is different? What if tomorrow never comes the way you imagine it? But still, the bread baked in the morning. The prayers rose with the evening light. Children laughed in the streets. The world, though smaller and more uncertain than before, was still turning. And as long as it turned, so did we. Looking back now, I see it clearly. The calm before the storm. The way life holds on desperately to what it knows, even as the winds begin to shift. I can still feel the weight of those days pressing against me, like the moment before a wave crashes, when everything is suspended, just for a breath, and you believe, against all odds, that maybe, just maybe, it won't break. But it did. Of course it did. And the life I knew unraveled, thread by thread, until nothing was left but silence. It didn't happen all at once. No storm blows in that slowly, yet leaves such devastation behind. It began with small shifts, things that seemed insignificant until they weren't. A curfew here, a new rule there, more soldiers in the streets, fewer neighbors at the window. We adapted. What else could we do? It's strange how quickly you can make space for fear in your life, like rearranging the furniture to fit a piece that doesn't belong. We kept waiting for things to go back to normal, whatever normal meant anymore. But instead, the world kept shrinking. One morning, I woke to the sound of footsteps outside, heavy boots pacing down the alley like they belonged there. My mother was already at the window, her breath fogging the glass. She whispered, "Stay inside today," though I wasn't sure if it was advice or a prayer. I nodded, pressing my ear to the door, trying to decipher the rhythm of those footsteps, as if the pace at which a man walks might tell you if he means to harm you. That same day, they rationed our bread. We used to bake it ourselves, the smell filling the house, warm and sweet, like a promise. Now it arrived dry and crumbling, a loaf that seemed more dust than food. My mother cut it with the care of a jeweler slicing precious stones, counting every piece twice before giving us each our share. She always gave me the bigger piece, though I pretended not to notice. Everything had to stretch. Bread, patience, hope, especially hope. The streets outside changed too. Each day, there were fewer faces I knew. Families disappeared without a word, as if the night had swallowed them whole. When I asked my mother where they had gone, she only shook her head. "To a safer place," she whispered, though her eyes betrayed her. I knew even then that no such place existed. Not for us. And yet, life didn't stop. Not all at once, at least. Children still played, though their laughter felt different, thinner somehow, like it might shatter if you listened too closely. My neighbors still prayed, though their voices were quieter, words wrapped in fear. My father still hummed his songs, but now they felt less like melodies and more like memories, slipping away note by note. It was in the little things that I saw the end coming. Ordinary moments, broken like cracked porcelain, impossible to piece back together. The way my mother's hand lingered just a little longer on my shoulder when she thought no one was watching. The way my father sharpened his old knife, though there was nothing left to cut. The way people greeted each other less often, as if afraid that kindness might attract the wrong kind of attention. The soldiers were everywhere now, their shadows long and cold, stretching across the narrow streets like cracks in the pavement. They looked at us as if we were already gone, ghosts moving through a world that no longer belonged to us. Their eyes were hard, their voices sharp, barking orders in a language that felt more like metal scrapping against stone. But it wasn't the soldiers that haunted me most. It was the silence they left behind. The quiet absence of those who had once filled these streets with noise and life. The sound of a door slamming shut and never opening again. The stillness of an empty window, curtains drawn like a final goodbye. We began to live smaller, shrinking into the corners of our own lives, hoping that if we made ourselves small enough, the storm might pass over us. I remember the way my mother folded our clothes with such care, as if neat seams and smooth fabric could hold chaos at bay. I remember the way my father kissed my forehead every night, his lips cold, like the touch of winter wind. And I remember the way I stopped dreaming, stopped hoping. Not suddenly, but slowly, like a candle guttering out, flickering one last time before darkness settles in. At first, I told myself that hope was dangerous, a luxury we could no longer afford. But the truth was simpler. I had forgotten how to hope. It's strange, isn't it? How fear can become familiar, like an old coat you wear even in warm weather just because it fits. How you begin to measure time not in hours or days, but in moments of almost. Almost crying, almost screaming, almost believing that tomorrow will be kinder. Almost, but never quite. One evening, I sat at the kitchen table with my mother. She was mending a shirt, her fingers moving with the precision of someone who has stitched the same seam 100 times. "It's important to keep things in order," she said, though we both knew there was no order left in the world. I watched her hands, thinking how strange it was to care about a torn shirt when everything around us was unraveling. But maybe that's what you do when your life is falling apart. You focus on the threads you can still hold. Then came the day when they took our names. They arrived with lists, official-looking papers with long, narrow columns, and we became numbers written in neat rows. Names, identities, histories, all erased with a single stroke of a pen. They asked my father his name, and he said it slowly, as if saying it might help him remember who he was. The soldier scribbled something down, and just like that, we were no longer ourselves. I remember standing there, feeling the weight of my new identity, a number that didn't belong to me, a label stitched into my skin. My father tried to smile, though his eyes were heavy with sadness. "It's just for now," he said. But I knew better. I could feel the finality in that moment, the way the air shifted, colder and heavier than before. The ghetto had changed, and so had we. What once felt like home, however narrow and fragile, was now a place of waiting. A purgatory where every breath was borrowed and every step felt like walking a tightrope over an abyss. Each night I lay awake, counting the breaths between silence and sleep, wondering when the knock on the door would come, wondering who would be taken next, wondering if I would have time to say goodbye. We were all waiting for something we couldn't name, and in the waiting, we began to disappear, bit by bit, breath by breath. Not in a bang, but with the slow erosion of everything that made us whole. And somehow, life went on. Bread was still rationed. Clothes were still mended. Songs were still sung, though quieter now, like whispers shared between ghosts. But hope was harder to find with each passing day. And yet, we held on to it, even when it felt like grasping at smoke. Because what else was there? We held on to the ordinary things, the little things, because sometimes that was all we had. And sometimes that was enough, until it wasn't. It happened in the middle of the night. I woke to the sound of fists pounding on the door, loud, angry, impatient. It was a sound I'd heard before, always from someone else's door. But that night, it was ours. I remember the stillness just before it, a moment suspended between dream and terror, when you think, maybe it isn't real. Maybe if I stay very still, it will go away. But it didn't. The door splintered under their weight, and they came in like a winter wind, sharp, cold, and merciless. My father stepped forward, his hands raised in surrender, but they shoved him hard against the wall, and he slumped without a sound. My mother cried out, clutching her shawl as if it could protect her from what was coming. They didn't touch her. Not yet. They saved that cruelty for later. "Get up!" one of them barked, the words like a slap across the room. "Now!" I scrambled out of bed, clutching the thin blanket as if it could hide me. My brother was already awake, standing in the corner, his small frame rigid with fear. I grabbed his hand, squeezing it tight, as if that single gesture could anchor us to a world slipping away. The soldiers moved quickly, tearing through our home with practiced indifference. Pots, books, clothes, everything we owned reduced to clutter on the floor. My father struggled to his feet, swaying as though the ground beneath him had become unsteady. He met my gaze for a moment, a fleeting, silent apology, and then lowered his eyes. We weren't allowed to pack. "Just yourselves," they said, like we were objects, not people. My mother tried to gather a few things, a photograph, a loaf of bread, but the soldiers knocked them from her hand. "Leave it," he growled, and so we left. We were herded into the street where dozens of others already stood, shivering in their night clothes under the sharp gaze of the soldiers. The cold bit at my skin, but I barely noticed. I was too busy searching the crowd, looking for familiar faces, for neighbors, for friends. Some were there, others weren't. Their absence gnawed at me more than the cold. Then came the waiting. We stood in the street for hours as the night bled into morning and the stars faded into a dull gray sky. My brother leaned against me, his body heavy with exhaustion. My mother whispered prayers under her breath, her fingers tracing invisible patterns in the air. My father stood very still, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. I could tell he was trying not to shake. When the trucks arrived, it was almost a relief. At least we would be moving. But that relief dissolved the moment they shoved us inside. The truck was already crowded when we were forced into it. People pressed together, shoulder to shoulder, breath mingling in the stale, suffocating air. My mother pulled me close, wrapping her arms around me as if she could shield me from the crush of bodies. "It will be all right," she whispered, though neither of us believed it. The door slammed shut, plunging us into darkness. Someone began to cry, a thin, pitiful wail that echoed through the truck like a broken lullaby. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. We were prisoners already, long before we reached the camp. And then the truck rumbled to life, jerking forward, and the journey began. The hours stretched on without mercy. The air grew thick with the smell of sweat and fear, and the walls seemed to close in around us. I clutched my brother's hand, feeling the weak pulse beneath his skin, and willed myself not to cry. Tears would do no good here. At one point, someone fainted. A woman, I think. There was no room for her to fall. She simply slumped against the bodies around her, her breath shallow and ragged. No one could help her. We were all too busy trying to stay upright, trying to survive the journey, even though none of us knew where it would end. I lost track of time. Day and night blurred together, indistinguishable in the darkness. Hunger gnawed at my stomach, but it was a dull ache compared to the fear. Fear of the unknown, of what waited for us at the end of the road. Fear of losing each other before we even arrived. At some point, my brother leaned his head against my shoulder and whispered, "Do you think they'll let us go?" His voice was small, full of hope that didn't belong in that truck. I didn't know how to answer him. "Maybe," I whispered back, because it was the only word I could find. Maybe. A word suspended between hope and despair, between everything and nothing. And then after what felt like an eternity, the truck stopped. The doors groaned open, spilling harsh light into the darkness. For a moment, we were all blinded, squinting against the glare. Then the soldiers began shouting, dragging us out into the cold. We stumbled from the truck, blinking in the unfamiliar light. My feet hit the ground, hard, cold, unfamiliar. I wanted to scream, to run, to fight. There was no space for anything but obedience. And then I saw it, a place that would swallow us whole. The gates loomed ahead, iron bars twisted into words I couldn't understand. Smoke curled from distant chimneys, and the air smelled of ash. People shuffled through the gates, their faces blank, their bodies moving as if they'd forgotten how to resist. The soldier at my side gave me a shove, and I stumbled forward, dragging my brother with me. My mother walked ahead, her back straight, her head high. My father followed, his steps heavy with resignation. I glanced down at my brother, his small hand still in mine. His fingers were cold, so cold they barely felt like fingers anymore. I squeezed his hand hard, as if that single gesture could keep us both alive. And then we stepped through the gates into a world where hope didn't exist. The door to life as I knew it had closed behind me. I didn't know it then, but I would never walk back through it again. The first thing that hits you is the smell. It clings to the air, thick and inescapable. Burnt hair, sweat, decay, and something else, something sour and unnatural. You don't know what it is right away. You only know that it wraps around you like a second skin and makes it hard to breathe. They push us forward through the gates, herding us like animals. No, not even animals. Animals have names. Animals are fed. We are not animals here. We are something less. A soldier barks an order and the group splinters. Men to one side, women and children to the other. My father turns toward me, his eyes wide with panic, but they shove him before he can say goodbye. I reach for him, but his figure disappears into the crowd, swallowed whole by the mass of bodies moving in the opposite direction. The last thing I see is his back, his shoulders hunched under a weight I cannot help him carry. I want to scream, but the sound dies in my throat. There is no space for grief here, only obedience. The air smells of fear and sweat and things I do not want to name. My mother pulls me close, her hand gripping mine so tightly that I wonder if she's holding on for my sake or hers. They lead us to a courtyard where more orders are shouted. Words I can't understand, but the meaning is clear enough. Strip everything now. We stand there stunned, clutching what little we have left. Scarves, shoes, coats. Things that smell like home. Things that smell like us. Then piece by piece, it's all taken. The scarf my mother wore on holidays, the coat my brother outgrew but insisted I wear to stay warm, the shoes my father polished every week, no matter how scuffed they were, gone. I hesitate for a moment, clinging to the frayed edge of my dress, and that's when I feel it. A crack deep inside me, like the first shiver of ice on a winter river. It's not just cloth they're stripping away. It's everything. They hand us shapeless rags in return. Scratchy uniforms that don't fit, that don't belong to us. I catch a glimpse of my reflection in a broken window. The girl staring back looks like me, but thinner. Her eyes are wide and lost. Her hair was cut too short, her skin pale under the dim light. She is me, and yet she isn't. I feel myself slipping away piece by piece with every item I surrender. The next indignity comes in the form of numbers. We are lined up, and a man with a needle marks our skin with ink. The sting is sharp, but it's not the pain that makes me tremble. It's the permanence, the finality. The man mutters something as he works. I try to imagine he's apologizing, but his voice is flat, mechanical. When he's finished, I glance down at my arm. The number stares back at me, black and unforgiving. It is ugly, foreign. It does not belong to me. I am no longer a name. I am a number now, a thing. When the branding is done, we are led deeper into the camp. It stretches out before us like a wound. Barracks lined in rows, watchtowers looming over fences that cut into the sky like barbed wire. The chimneys in the distance exhale thick columns of smoke that twist into the air, and I realize with a sick jolt that the smoke smells like the smell that greeted us at the gates. We are shoved into a barrack, dozens of us, crammed into a space that could barely hold half that number. The walls are damp and cold, the wooden bunks splintered and bare. A thin blanket is tossed our way as if it's a gift. It smells of mildew, but I clutch it like it's the last piece of the world I used to know. There is no room to lie down properly. We are forced to sleep in shifts, curled into one another like stray animals seeking warmth. I sleep with my brother pressed against my side, his small body trembling beneath the thin blanket. I try to hum a lullaby into his ear, one my mother used to sing, but the song catches in my throat. It feels out of place here, like something delicate trapped in a machine of grinding metal. The others in the barracks speak little. Some cry softly into the night. Others stare at the ceiling, their eyes empty. There are no dreams here, no tomorrow. Only the heavy weight of the present, pressing down like the lid of a coffin. Morning comes without warning. A soldier banging on the door, shouting at us to rise. My body aches from the cold and the cramped space, but I scramble to my feet, pulling my brother with me. There's no breakfast, only lines. Endless lines where we stand, shivering, waiting for orders, waiting for something to happen. Time stretches and snaps in strange ways here. There are no clocks, no bells to mark the hours. Only the sun rising and falling over a world where every day is the same. An endless repetition of hunger, cold, and fear. The worst part isn't the hunger or the cold. It's the not knowing. Not knowing what will happen next. Not knowing who will be taken. Not knowing if today will be the day we don't come back. They keep us moving. Work, march, stand, repeat. We haul stones from one end of the camp to the other, though no wall ever takes shape. I watch as people fall around me, some from exhaustion, others from despair. There's no ceremony to their loss, no moment of silence. The guards drag the bodies away like broken furniture, discarded without thought. And we keep moving as if nothing has happened. I learn quickly that there are rules here. Rules no one tells you, but that you must learn fast if you want to survive. Don't look the guards in the eye. Don't ask questions. Don't stand out. Move when you're told. Stay silent. Stay invisible. The days pass like shadows, blurring into one another. I no longer recognize my reflection. My face is hollow, my limbs thin and brittle. My brother's once curious eyes are dull now, his spirit chipped away with every passing day. He clings to me at night, his small hands gripping my arm as if I am the only thing tethering him to this world. And maybe I am. The old me, the girl who dreamed of new shoes and long walks through familiar streets, feels like a distant memory. She belongs to a different time, different world. Here I am someone else. Or perhaps I'm no one at all. The camp has taken everything. My home, my name, my family. But it has not taken my brother. Not yet. And so I hold on. Not to hope, not to dreams, but to him. As long as I have his hand in mine, I am not entirely gone. Not yet. But I feel the cracks spreading, slow, insidious, like ice creeping across the surface of a pond. I know that one day I might wake up and find that the person I used to be is no longer there at all. And that terrifies me more than anything else. In the camp, survival is not living, it's endurance. Every breath feels stolen, every heartbeat a betrayal of someone who no longer gets to have one. Morning doesn't come as a relief, it drags us into another day, identical to the last, filled with work, hunger, and waiting. The waiting is the worst part, the silence between orders, the hollow space where fear festers. We rise before the sun, forced into long lines outside, the cold biting into our skin through the thin uniforms we wear. A guard marches past, barking commands that cut through the frigid air. The slightest hesitation invites punishment, a slap, a kick, or worse. I keep my brother close, his small frame tucked against mine. He hasn't spoken in days, as if silence is the only armor he has left. Our work changes each day, but it always seems pointless. Hauling rocks, digging holes that fill with snow or mud only to be dug again the next day. The stones we carry are heavy, but it's not the weight of the stone that breaks you. It's the uselessness of it. The knowledge that nothing we do matters, that no wall will ever be built, no purpose ever served. My hands bleed from the cold, the skin cracked and raw. I try to wrap them at night with the edge of my blanket, but there's never enough warmth, never enough comfort to chase away the ache. My brother's cough is getting worse, rattling deep in his chest. I hold him close, willing my body to share what little heat I have left, though I know it won't be enough. The food, if you can call it that, comes in small gray portions, thin soup that tastes of nothing, a crust of bread so stale it could snap a tooth. My brother looks at his piece but doesn't eat. His small hands shake as he tries to break the bread in half. I take his share when the guards aren't looking, pretending not to notice the way he stares at me with dull, empty eyes. "You need it more," he whispers. I want to argue, but I don't. I swallow the bread, the guilt heavier than the hunger it eases. People disappear every day. Some collapse from exhaustion, their bodies left in the snow until the guards drag them away. Others are taken during the night, gone without a sound, as if they never existed at all. I try not to look when it happens. If you don't look, you can pretend it won't happen to you. But it always happens, eventually. The barracks are crowded with too many bodies and too little space. At night we lie tangled together, limbs folded into each other like broken branches. I hear the quiet sobs of people who have forgotten how to hope but still remember how to cry. I don't cry. I can't. The tears have frozen somewhere inside me, lost beneath layers of fear and exhaustion. I meet people from other towns, other lives, though we don't exchange names. Names are a luxury we can't afford. We are numbers here, shadows moving through the same narrow spaces, pretending we are still whole when we are anything but. There are moments, small, fleeting moments, when humanity breaks through the cracks. A piece of bread shared between strangers, a whispered prayer in the dark, a hand resting briefly on a shoulder, reminding you that you are not alone, not entirely. These moments are rare, but they are what keep us alive. Not the food, not the warmth, but these small acts of defiance. One day as we line up for work, a woman collapses beside me, her body folding like paper under the weight of hunger. The guard steps forward, his boot raised to kick her awake. Without thinking, I reached out, lifting her back to her feet before the blow can land. The guard glares at me, and for a moment I think I will die. But he says nothing. He moves on, leaving me standing there, the woman's weight heavy against my side. She whispers a thank you, so soft I almost don't hear it. That night, I lie awake, staring at the ceiling of the barrack, wondering what made me act. What made me risk everything for someone I didn't know? Maybe it's the same thing that makes me hold my brother close at night, whispering stories from a world that no longer exists. Maybe it's what's left of the person I used to be, clinging to the belief that kindness still matters, even here. Or maybe it's just habit. Maybe we hold on to each other because if we let go, we'll disappear altogether. As the days drag on, I feel myself unraveling, losing pieces of who I was, bit by bit, with every step, every breath. My brother's cough deepens, and I know in some distant part of me that he is slipping away. I hold him tighter, as if I can anchor him to this world with my hands alone. But deep down, I know the truth. Survival is not a promise. It is a gamble. One that we are all destined to lose, sooner or later. And yet, every morning I rise. I rise because the guards demand it, because my brother still needs me, because my body remembers how to move even when my spirit does not. I rise because to lie down is to give up, and I'm not ready to do that. Not yet. There is no triumph here, no grand gesture of resistance. There's only the simple, stubborn act of surviving, of placing one foot in front of the other, again and again, even when the ground beneath you feels like it might crumble. I don't know how long I will last. I don't know if I will ever leave this place. But as long as I have breath, as long as I have my brother's hand in mine, I will keep going. Because that, in the end, is all we have. The will to keep moving, even when the world has stopped making sense. Loss arrives silently. It slips into your life like a shadow, unnoticed at first, until it consumes everything. Here it happens slowly, cruelly, piece by piece, until there's almost nothing left to mourn. I wake one morning to the sound of my brother's coughing, sharp and relentless, each breath a struggle. His face is pale, his lips cracked. I hold him against me, rubbing his thin arms, trying to transform warmth that I don't have to give. "It will pass," I whisper, though the lie tastes bitter. We both know what happens to those who grow too weak. Each day I watch him fade, bit by bit, like a candle burning down to its final flicker. His voice grows quieter, his once bright eyes dull with exhaustion. He no longer asks questions. He no longer hums the songs our mother used to sing. He just stares into the distance as if trying to see a world beyond this one. And then one night, the coughing stops. I shake him gently, calling his name, but he doesn't respond. His small body is still against mine. His breath so shallow, I can't tell if he's breathing at all. Panic grips me, sharp and cold, but I swallow it down. I pull him closer, wrapping the threadbare blanket around us both. Tomorrow will be better. I whisper into his hair, though I know he can't hear me. The next morning, he is gone. He slips away quietly, as if even death has grown tired here. I sit with his lifeless body for a moment, cradling him as I once did when he was a baby, before the world unraveled. His face is peaceful, more peaceful than it has been in months. And for a fleeting moment, I feel a strange kind of relief. At least his suffering is over. Then the grief hits, sudden and fierce, like a wave crashing over me. I want to scream, to tear at the walls, to demand that the universe give him back. But I can't. There's no room for grief here. No time for goodbyes. A guard shouts, and I know what comes next. They will take him away, like they've taken so many others. His small body will disappear into the smoke that curls from the chimneys, leaving nothing behind but ash and memory. I want to hold on to him, to refuse to let him go, but I don't. Instead, I press a kiss to his cold forehead, a silent farewell, and lay him gently on the ground. My hands linger for a moment, tracing the curve of his cheek, the delicate line of his jaw, and then I stand, because standing is the only thing left to do. They come for him an hour later. I don't watch. I can't. If I watch, it will be real. And I am not ready for real. Not yet. The barrack feels emptier without him, though it is just as crowded as ever. I sit on the wooden plank where we once huddled together and stare at the space where he used to be. The silence is deafening. I feel like I'm falling into it, into a void where nothing makes sense anymore. The days blur after that. I move through them like a ghost, hollow and weightless. I no longer count the hours. I no longer notice the cold or the hunger. I am here, but I am not. It is strange the way loss changes you. Not all at once, but gradually, like water eroding stone. I feel the cracks spreading inside me, little by little, until I wonder if anything solid will be left. I look around the camp and see the same emptiness mirrored in the faces of those around me. We are all breaking, slowly, quietly. Some have already shattered. I see it in their vacant stares, in the way they walk without direction, their bodies moving through a world they no longer believe in. There is no mourning here, no rituals to mark the passing of the ones we loved. Death comes too frequently for that. It is part of the rhythm now, as ordinary as the morning lineup, as inevitable as the setting sun. I think of my brother often, though I try not to. It hurts too much, like pressing on a bruise that will never heal. I remember the sound of his laugh, the way he used to chase me through the streets of the ghetto, his face flushed with joy. I hold on to those memories, even as they slip through my fingers, fading like smoke in the wind. The others in the barrack avoid looking at me. They have seen what I've lost, and they know that their turn will come soon enough. Here, grief is a mirror, reflecting back the fear we all carry. It is easier not to look. I don't blame them. In the camp, survival means letting go, not just of the people you love, but of yourself. I feel it happening, slowly but surely. The things that once made me who I am, the dreams, the laughter, the kindness, they are slipping away, one by one. I try to hold on to them, but my grip is weak, and the world is relentless. And yet there are moments when the person I used to be flickers back to life, like when a stranger offers me half of their bread, or when someone hums a song in the dark, and I find myself humming along, even though I no longer remember the words. These moments are small, barely noticeable, but they matter. They remind me that I am still here, for now. I tell myself that I will survive this, though I don't know if that's true. Survival feels like an abstract concept, something that belongs to someone else. But I am still breathing, and for now, that is enough. And so I keep moving. I keep breathing. I keep waking up each morning, even when I don't want to. Because what else can I do? The camp has taken so much from me. My family, my home, my hope. But it has not taken everything. Not yet. I hold on to the last fragments of myself, small as they are, and pray that they will be enough. And though the cracks inside me grow wider every day, I whisper to myself the only truth I know. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. There is a moment every morning when the night and day seem to blur, just before the guards come, just before the orders begin. It is a fragile sliver of time where, for the briefest second, I can pretend. Pretend I am still someone, somewhere else. I close my eyes and imagine the smell of bread baking in our kitchen, the warm embrace of my mother's shawl, the soft hum of my brother's laughter. I allow myself to dwell there, if only for a breath. And then the shouts begin, and the illusion crumbles like dry leaves in my hands. We move through the camp as though caught in a terrible dance, each step choreographed by fear, each gesture dictated by survival. The days are long, the nights endless. Hope is a dangerous thing here, and yet, it's strange how it clings to you, even when you try to shake it off. It hides in the smallest places, like a stubborn weed pushing through cracks in stone. I see it sometimes, in the kindness of a stranger who gives me half their bread, or in the whisper of a song carried softly across the barracks. These moments are fleeting, almost invisible, but they are there, and they matter. They are what tether me to the edges of who I once was, keeping me from disappearing entirely into the void that surrounds us. One night, as we huddle together for warmth, a woman beside me begins to hum. The sound is faint, little more than a murmur against the cold air, but it stirs something in me. I know the song, an old lullaby my mother used to sing. Before I realize what I'm doing, I join her, my voice trembling in the darkness. For a moment, the camp fades away. There is no hunger, no cold, no fear. There's only the music, soft and fragile, wrapping around us like a blanket. Others join in, their voices weaving together in the shadows, forming a quiet, defying hymn. It is not much, but it is enough. There are the moments that remind me that we are still human, that even here, surrounded by ash and ruin, something inside us refuses to surrender. There are other moments too, less beautiful, but just as important, moments when I catch myself reaching for the person I used to be. Like the time I shared my bread with a woman who had nothing, even though my stomach screamed with hunger. Or the time I helped an old man to his feet, knowing it would slow me down, knowing the guards would notice. It's not bravery, it's not heroism. It's something smaller than that, something quieter. It's the stubborn belief that no matter how far we fall, we do not have to fall all the way. That we can hold on to something, even when it's just a thread. Some nights, though, the weight of everything presses too heavily, and I wonder if I have any thread left to hold. I think of my brother, of his small hands slipping from mine, and I feel myself unraveling all over again. The darkness is vast, and it is easy to get lost in it. But then I remember what my mother used to say. Even in the worst of times, you must carry yourself with grace, for the way you treat others is the measure of who you are. I don't know if I believe that anymore. I don't know if grace or kindness matter in a place like this, but I try. I try because it is the only thing I have left. This fragile sense of dignity, this stubborn refusal to let go of the person I was before. And somehow, that is enough. One day, as we line up for roll call, the woman next to me stumbles, her knees buckling beneath her. The guard moves toward her, his face cold and hard. But before he can reach her, I step forward. I catch her arm, steadying her. For a moment, our eyes meet, and I see in her gaze the same thing I feel. Gratitude, shame, exhaustion, and something else. Something like hope. The guard glares at me, but he says nothing. He moves on as if my small act of defiance isn't worth his attention. I exhale, a breath I didn't realize I was holding, and help the woman back to her feet. She squeezes my hand just once before we move on. That night, as I sit in the cold barrack, I replay the moment over and over in my mind. It was nothing really, just a gesture, a second's worth of kindness. But in a place like this, it feels monumental. It feels like a victory. Not over the guards, not over the camp, but over the darkness that tries to consume us. I think of the phrase I've heard whispered in moments of quiet despair. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. It is strange to think that, even here, in the depths of cruelty, there are things too terrible to wish upon anyone, even those who have hurt us. Hate is heavy, and I carry enough weight already. I have no room left for vengeance. As the nights stretch on, I hold tightly to the small things. The song hummed in the dark, the bread shared between strangers, the fleeting touch of a hand. These things do not undo the suffering. They do not bring back the ones I've lost, but they remind me that I am still here, that I am still human. And as long as I am human, there's something to fight for. It is not hope, exactly, that keeps me going. It is something quieter, something stubborn. It is the belief that no matter how dark the world becomes, we must carry some small light within us, even if it's only a flicker, even if it's only for ourselves. And so I rise each morning. I move through the camp. I take one breath, then another, and place one foot in front of the other, not because I believe in tomorrow, but because today is still mine. And that, for now, is enough. It didn't feel like salvation at first. Liberation came quietly, almost like a mistake, slipping into the camp on the heels of a cold gray morning. The guards were gone, just like that. No warnings, no final shouts. They simply vanished, leaving behind empty towers and a silence that was somehow louder than all the horrors that had come before. For a long moment, none of us moved. We stood there, numb and shivering, waiting for the next command, the next blow. But it never came. Someone whispered, "It's over." The words floated in the cold air, fragile and impossible to believe. We staggered forward as if testing the truth of it. The gates that had held us for so long were open. Open! And yet the sight of freedom was more terrifying than comforting. We stood there, stunned, staring out at a world that had kept turning without us. A world we no longer knew how to step into. People began to walk through the gates, some slowly, others with wild, desperate steps, as if running from ghosts they couldn't escape. I hesitated. My feet felt rooted to the ground, as though the camp still had a claim on me, as though I didn't know how to exist anywhere else. It was my mother who took the first step. She turned to me, her face gaunt but determined, and whispered, "Come." Her hand reached for mine, and though it was cold and frail, I clutched it like a lifeline. Together, we crossed the threshold. The road beyond the gates stretched out like a scar, empty and endless. There were no crowds waiting for us, no flags waving in celebration. There was only the open sky above and the hard ground beneath, as unfamiliar as a dream you can't quite wake from. We walked, not knowing where we were going, only that we couldn't stay. The sun was weak, struggling to break through the clouds, but it was there. It was enough. At first, freedom felt like just another burden. The weight of choice, where to go, what to do, who to be, pressed down on me with suffocating heaviness. I had survived the camp, but survival had not made me whole. I was still a fractured thing, a shadow of the person I used to be. I looked at my mother as we walked, her shoulders hunched under the weight of too many losses. She had made it out, but not unscathed. None of us had. The person she once was had been left behind, buried somewhere between the gates and the barracks. And I knew that, in some way, the same was true of me. We found shelter in an abandoned farmhouse along the road. A roof, a fire, and bread so stale it crumbled in our hands. But it was food, and we ate it with trembling hands as if the simple act of chewing might anchor us to this strange new reality. The silence in that farmhouse was overwhelming. For the first time in so long, there were no guards, no commands, no forced labor. Just the quiet hum of the wind outside, the crackle of the fire, and the sound of my own breathing. It should have felt like peace. Instead, it felt like absence. At night, the dreams came, twisted memories of the camp, of my brother's hands slipping from mine, of faces disappearing into the smoke. I woke gasping, clawing at the air, searching for someone I couldn't save. The nightmares were worse than the hunger, worse than the cold. They reminded me that, though my body had escaped, my soul was still trapped behind those gates. In the days that followed, other survivors found us, gaunt, hollow-eyed, carrying the same invisible weight. We shared food and stories, though neither was plentiful. Some spoke of family members they hoped to find, others of homes that might no longer exist. We spoke in whispers, as if raising our voices might summon the ghosts that haunted us. I thought that leaving the camp would mean an end to fear. I was wrong. The fear followed us, clinging to our skin like ash. Every noise on the road made me jump. Every shadow felt like a threat. I couldn't shake the feeling that the guards would return, that this freedom was just another trick. And yet, we kept moving. One step, then another. Not because we believed in the future, but because the present demanded it. As we walked, I realized that survival was not the end of the journey. It was only the beginning. I had to learn how to live again, how to carry the weight of what I had seen and lost without letting it crush me. I had to find a way to stitch together the fragments of myself, even though some pieces were gone forever. It wasn't just my brother I had lost. I had lost the version of myself who believed in safety, in certainty, in tomorrow. And I had to mourn her too. There were moments of kindness along the way. Strangers who offered bread, a warm coat, a place to sleep. These small gestures felt monumental, like cracks of light in a world still heavy with darkness. They reminded me that even though cruelty had tried to erase everything, kindness had survived too. One evening, as we sat around a small fire with other survivors, a man spoke of revenge, of hunting down the guards, of making him suffer the way we had suffered. His words were sharp, filled with the kind of anger that burns hotter than reason. My mother shook her head slowly and whispered, "I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy." Her words hung in the air, soft but unyielding. And in that moment, I understood. We carried enough pain already. To carry hatred too would be unbearable. The only way forward was to let go. Not of the memory, but of the weight. That night, under the stars, I made a quiet promise to myself. I would not let the darkness take what little humanity I had left. I would not let it twist me into something I was not. The road ahead was long, uncertain, and filled with ghosts. But it was ours to walk. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, we had a choice. And that in itself was a kind of freedom. We were free, not whole, not healed, but free. And somehow, that was enough for now. freedom, I've learned, it's not the same as healing. Survival isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of something far more difficult. In the camp, we lived hour to hour, moment to moment, held together by the simple need to see another sunrise. But out here, beyond the barbed wire and the towers, there is no guide, no map for how to put yourself back together. No one tells you what to do with the pieces that no longer fit. I walk through the world as if I am made of glass, fragile, cracked, transparent in places. I no longer know how to laugh without feeling guilty, or how to sit in silence without hearing the echoes of all I've lost. I thought the hardest part was surviving. I was wrong. The hardest part is learning how to live again. There are days when I forget for a moment where I've been. I'll hear a bird sing or feel the warmth of sunlight on my skin, and it will take me by surprise, this ordinary joy. But then it returns, the weight, the memory, the voice whispering that none of this will last. I don't know how to carry both hope and fear without one crushing the other. The faces of those I've lost haunt me still, especially my brother. I see him everywhere, in the eyes of children playing in the streets, in the laughter that bursts from strangers as if the world has never known sorrow. I wonder if he would have grown up to laugh like that. I wonder if I ever will. People expect gratitude from us, those of us who survived. They look at us as if we've been spared, as if we've been given a gift. But survival is not a gift. It is a burden, one that grows heavier with each passing day. The guilt sits in my chest like a stone, sharp-edged and unrelenting. Why me? Why did I survive when so many others did not? There are no answers to these questions. There never will be. I have learned to live with ghosts. They walk beside me, quiet but present. Their absence a constant reminder of what the world took from me. I speak to them sometimes, in the dark hours of the night, when sleep refuses to come. I tell them that I am sorry, that I tried, that I will carry them with me, always. There are no graves for those we lost. No markers to say, here lies my brother, my father, my friends. Their names have vanished into the wind, their bodies into smoke. I carry their memory in my heart, though it is a poor substitute for the weight of their presence. Every day I remind myself that I am still here, that I made it. But being here is not the same as being whole. Some days, the ache is so sharp it feels as if the world might swallow me whole. Other days, the numbness sets in, and I drift through the hours like a ghost, untouched by anything, good or bad. People ask me if I'm angry at the guards, at the world, at God. I tell them the truth. I don't have room for anger. I barely have room for myself. Anger is heavy, and I've carried enough. I do not forgive, but I refuse to hate. My mother's words still linger in my mind. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. She was right. No one deserves this, not even those who inflicted it. To wish this on anyone would mean becoming like them, and that is one thing I cannot allow. I must hold on to the last thread of my humanity even when it feels impossibly fragile. I am not the person I was before the war. That version of me is gone, buried beneath layers of grief and survival. But I am still someone. I am still here, and that has to mean something, even if I don't know what yet. There is no grand ending to the story, no moment of redemption or triumph. Life goes on, not in spite of what happened, but because of it. I move forward, step by step, carrying the weight of the past with me. Some days it feels unbearable. Other days it feels lighter. I plant small things, flowers in a garden, words on a page. I found comfort in the ordinary moments I once took for granted. The warmth of tea between my hands, the sound of rain tapping against a window, the smell of fresh bread. These things are not grand, but they are enough. I do not know what the future holds. I do not know if the nightmares will ever stop, or if the ache will ever fade. But I know this: I will not let the darkness take me. I will not let it define me. I survived, and that is enough. For now, I live for the small moments, for the kindness of strangers, for the sound of birds in the morning, for the memory of my brother's hand in mine. I live because despite everything, there's still beauty in the world. And maybe, just maybe, there's a future waiting for me that I cannot yet imagine. I carry the weight of the past, yes, but I also carry the hope that one day the weight will lessen and the cracks will begin to heal. Not fully, never fully, but enough. Enough to keep me going, enough to rebuild, enough to find a way forward, one step at a time. And that, I think, is what survival really means. Not just breathing, but learning to live with the broken pieces. One day, I hope I will not just survive. I hope I will learn to live again. And that, I think, is the truest victory. Alright, my friends, I can't say that I hope you enjoyed the story because I know it's a heart-wrenching story, but I hope the story resonated with you. There are stories so heavy, so steeped in loss that they defy comprehension. This was one of them. You've walked through her footsteps, felt the weight of hunger gnawing at her bones, heard the silence of loss echoing in her heart. You've carried her grief, step by step, through a world stripped of kindness, where names dissolve into numbers and humanity itself seems to wither. But this story is not hers alone. It is the story of humanity, of what we lose when cruelty is allowed to run free, when we turn away from the suffering of others. It is the story of every voice silenced by hatred, every hand let go too soon, every heart felt broken by the indifference of a world that should have known better. The temptation is to see this story through a lens of division. Us and them, victims and perpetrators, allies and enemies. But if you listen closely, you'll find something deeper. You'll hear not just the story of a Jewish survivor, but the story of what it means to be human in the face of inhumanity. It is a story written not just in her suffering, but in the suffering of countless others, across time, across borders, across history. Her pain belongs to all of us. Every tear that fell from her eyes is a part of the sorrow woven into the fabric of our shared humanity. Every life lost in those camps, every soul snatched away before its time, is a thread pulled from the same tapestry that binds us together. And when even a single thread is cut, the whole tapestry frays. The world has many ways of dividing us, by race, by faith, by place of birth, by the histories we inherit. But the truth is simpler and harder. The suffering of any people, of any child, of any mother or father, is the suffering of us all. We do not get to choose which stories matter. We do not get to say, this one is mine, and this one is not. Every drop of innocent blood that falls belongs to the same river, and it flows through all of us. This survivor could have been anyone. She could have been your sister, your daughter, your neighbor. Her brother could have been the boy down the street. Her mother, the woman who hands you bread at the market. When we look into the face of suffering, we are looking into a mirror. And if we cannot see ourselves in her story, in the quiet acts of kindness, the desperate clinging to life, the grief that knows no end, then we have already lost something far greater than we realize. It is easy to listen to a story like this and take sides, to align ourselves with the survivor because of who she is, or even to let hatred fester because of the identities assigned to those responsible for her pain. But that would be missing the point. This story does not ask for vengeance. It does not seek to divide or condemn. It simply asks to be heard. It asks us to sit with the uncomfortable truth that when one person suffers, we all do. That every atrocity, no matter where and when it happens, leaves a scar on all of us. In the end, the lesson is not about who deserves our empathy. It is that empathy cannot afford boundaries. The death of a stranger in a distant land is a death in our own collective heart. The cries of a child on the other side of the world should echo in our ears as loudly as those in our own homes. There is no other. There's only us. We must learn to hold the grief of others as if it were our own. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. The road to a more just world begins not with grand gestures or declarations, but with a quiet, simple recognition that the life of another, any other, matters. And that when we forget this, when we turn away from the pain of even a single person, we begin to unravel the very thing that makes us human. Listen to her story, but do not stop there. Do not let it rest as one story among many, relegated to the pages of history. Take it with you. Carry it in the choices you make, in the way you treat the people around you, in the way you respond to the suffering that still exists in the world today. Because stories like hers are still unfolding. Different names, different places, but the same pain, the same loss, the same quiet plea to be seen, to be heard, to matter. If we learn anything from her journey, let it be this. There is no them, there's only us. And the only way forward is together. When we honor the stories of those who have suffered, we honor the best part of ourselves. The part that still believes in kindness, in dignity, in the stubborn, impossible hope that tomorrow can be better. The part that knows every life lost diminishes all of us. And every act of kindness, no matter how small, stitches the world back together, thread by thread. This is not just her story, it is ours. Every step, every loss, every breath she took belongs to all of us. And it is up to us to ensure that stories like hers are not just remembered, but that they change us. So that the next time hatred knocks on our door, we answer not with indifference, but with defiance. Because as long as one of us suffers, none of us are truly free. And the only way we can honor those who are gone is to carry their memory forward. By building a world where no one, anywhere, ever again has to endure what she did. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. This is your host, Danny. I will see you next time.